Hey guys, M2 Collect here with another figure review. Next up is the Hasbro Marvel Legends series, X-Men, the animated series, the 90s cartoon, the VHS style packaging, X-Men, Marvel's Morph. So it's this guy here. He is the final one of the figures that have been announced and released so far. Mystique is still on pre-order. I got mine from D23, but Morph right now is kind of the last one. Shop Disney had him available, so I ordered it. It took like a week to get here, but I got him, and he is actually pretty awesome. He actually has the most new, I would say. Actually, I don't even know if that's correct, but he has pinless legs, which is kind of new. So he has some new. Wolverine had like new hands and new heads, and then Mystique only had new hair. Storm had new hair, maybe a new face. But Morph kind of feels like a lot more new compared to some of the others, but he kind of isn't, and I'll talk about that when we get into the figure. But these are all the ones that have been announced so far. So we have the 3 heroes and the 2 villains, so that makes, I mean, not 3 heroes, the 5 heroes and the 2 villains, which makes 7 figures total. If you count the retro X-Men Apocalypse, then I guess he would be animated series, even though it says it's comic inspired. There's no cell shading on this guy. And then the Retro Beast with the lab coat, I mean, it's still comic book, but I think a lot of people in their minds kind of associate that look with the X-Men, the animated series. But this is all they have so far. Hasbro has teased that they have a lot planned and a lot coming, but this might be it for this year. Maybe in 2023 we'll see some new ones with PulseCon tomorrow, and some of you guys watching this may have already watched PulseCon. Maybe there will be further announcements for some more. We'll see. I think it's crazy if they don't do a Cyclops. Really crazy. This would also be a great time to do a Nightcrawler. Because I think that figure on the aftermarket has really gone up, and people would love to get their hands on a Nightcrawler figure, so they should do that. Gambit, Rogue, there's lots of figures that they could do, plus, you know, all the different the villains and stuff, you know, even if they go, you know, a little bit of a thicker box. So we'll see what they do. Hopefully there's a lot more coming to it. But Morph here, the artwork I think looks really nice. See Marvel's Morph there. We get the Morph there in the corner. We get the 3D render of him back there. There's no errors or issues with this guy. He's good to go. The bio reads, the mutant shapeshifter Morph returns to haunt the X-Men after being captured and manipulated by Mr. Sinister. So we actually get 2 head sculpts for Morph, one with his normal hero look, and then one where he comes back and he's kind of evil. So there are all the boxes so you can see them together, and I think that looks great, but let's get on to the figure. Okay, and here we have Morph out of the package, and you can see here, he looks pretty awesome. We get the interchangeable head and interchangeable hands. He doesn't have any additional accessories or anything like that. When we look at the straps on his legs and at the top of his boots, the awesome part is that's part of the sculpt. It's no longer a loose piece that's going to fall down on its own, or that you would have to glue in place, like the Cyclops, the Jim Lee Cyclops figure that we got twice, where you had to keep adjusting those. Those things are part of the figure, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. I will compare Morph with Vulcan because they're essentially the same body. The torso is the same. He does have butterfly joints in there, which is pretty crazy because you're not going to really get... Well, actually, you can still get a lot of good use out of the butterfly joints, even with the jacket. So that's not so bad. So it's essentially the Vulcan figure, but, you know, with the straps of the boots at the top of the boot and then on the leg, you know, is it really the same? And I'll talk about that a little bit, because yes and no, it's kind of interesting. But because of that, the Vulcan body, you know, replacing Bucky Cap, this figure's pretty tall. So he's going to be taller than really all the other X-Men animated series figures when I show you the comparison. A couple of people commented like, whoa, Morph is pretty huge, isn't he? And yeah, he is, but that's because, again, this body's a little bit taller. Plus, you know, I had him standing next to Wolverine and Jean Grey, a lot shorter figures. It's just kind of how it worked out. But let's get in for a closer look at Morph, because I think he looks great. But more than anything, I'm just happy to have a Morph figure from the animated series. You know, we had the Age of Apocalypse one, and that's cool, but now we have the animated series Morph, and when I hear Morph, I think about Morph. This is the look that I think about, so let's get in for a closer look. Okay, so here's an up-close look at Morph. Now, in the animated series, when I picture Morph, this isn't exactly how I picture him looking. I think, like, his chin is a little bit more defined, I guess, and So like even looking at the artwork, like if you notice, to me those don't exactly look the same, and I think a lot of it's going to be in the chin, whereas they tried to do it a little bit where his chin kind of points out. I think his cheekbones are a little too wide. I think if they're a little bit more narrow, I think it would have looked like him a little bit more. But maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm being nitpicky. Not that this is a bad head sculpt at all. It's just, to me, I don't immediately go, oh, that's more from the animated series. But, you know, just me. But that's the regular one. Let's pop this off and take a look at the evil one. This one, though, when I look at it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's Morph from the animated series. I could see it there. The chin, you know, still has kind of the same thing along with this one. It's, you know, I think the cheeks should have been a little bit in more, not as wide. But this one, yeah, I could see it for the animated series. He's got the dark bags under his eyes, and they look pretty good. The way they do the digital print came out looking really, really nice. We also have the interchangeable open hands. No big deal on these hands, as you can see there. They're kind of large. There's a lot of sculpted detail actually in the hands, like the veins and stuff on the back. Look at all the creases and wrinkles and stuff on the inside. So that's actually a nice touch, you know, some detailed in the hands, but you know, they're kind of just hands. But it works. Looking at the figure, though, we've seen this jacket before. You know, it's the same one that that Cyclops has used. The arms are the same. It's a single jointed elbow with the swivel at the elbow and everything. Again, those aren't anything new. The torso is, again, it is the Vulcan body, so you do have the butterfly joint in there. The legs are essentially Vulcan, but these strap parts, so you can actually see the top of this cut, but the swivel is at the top of that strap. So essentially you have the Vulcan leg, and this would still be, regardless if it's, you know, retooled, it's still a new mold, right? So the muscle definition is basically the exact same on these legs. It's just then that they would have a cutout portion that wouldn't be so wide, and then they would have this strap part that's like glued on top, and then the leg would then come together, is how I picture this to be. Because again, looking at the muscle definition is the exact same. The exact same. So it's just when it gets to this point, it's modified so it could fit the straps. And again, that's the same that's going to be down here on the lower leg portion just above the boot cut, the calf. It's going to be the same exact thing. So essentially, again, Vulcan body, which means he is pretty damn tall. Looking at the cell shading isn't all that much, which is great. So you get a little bit of a dark brown here on the arm, nothing on the back. On this arm, it's a little bit thicker, goes all the way up into the collar along the shoulder and stuff. There, again, still pretty minimal. Here on the front of the legs, you get a little bit of dark blue, a little bit of dark yellow, and that's really it. And then here is probably where it's most noticeable, down the lower leg, the boot, onto the feet. But not a whole lot in terms of the cell shading, which is great, because, you know, not everyone is the biggest fan of cell shade, and then for our only morph like this, to have it pretty minimal, I think is definitely the right move. It's there, you know, to kind of pay homage to the animated series, but then it's subtle enough that those that don't care about the cell shading could pick this up and probably be happy with it. So if you're one of those ones that absolutely hates the cell shading, what do you think when it's pretty subtle like this, where it's really not overboard and it's not crazy around? Like, they don't even have any on, well, I was going to say none on the torso, but right here under his pecs, I guess, he does have a little bit there. So pretty minimal. You guys let me know down in the comments below what you think of the cell shading. But let's check out his articulation now. Okay, so articulation. So Morph can look down all the way. He can look up a little bit. The jacket does kind of get in the way, so if you kind of adjust it, oops, and then I just popped the head right on off. You can get him to look up somewhat. If only he would have looked up and get blasted by the damn Sentinel. Actually, he pushed Wolverine out of the way anyway, who would re-heal. This head feels kind of loose on there now. That's kind of loose on there. I didn't notice that before. Let me see this other head. This one's a little bit tighter to get on there. Okay, definitely no looseness with the evil head. So I guess it's just this head where it just feels a little loose. It's not super wobbly or anything, so just heads up on that. Full rotation, side to side. Some pivot, not a whole lot. Shoulder you can get to go straight out like so. Full rotation in there. Upper bicep swivel, single jointed elbow, and you get a swivel at the elbow, and you get a little over 90-degree bend there. Wrists swivel, and they do hinge. They all have the horizontal hinge on there. And remember, with this one, Vulcan body, there is a butterfly joint, so you can get some use out of the butterfly going back, coming forward a little bit, but the jacket is going to get in the way there. You have an ab crunch, so he can crunch forward that much, decent amount. He can crunch back a little bit. The jacket does kind of hinder and get in the way there. Waist swivel, watch out for that belt. You might have to move it up or down a little bit. Oh, and then a little bit of cel shading there on the hip piece. Legs go out that far apart. He can kick forward that far. Goes back tiny bit. Upper thigh cut, again, right at the top of the strap. Double jointed knee that is pinless, so you get that much bend there, and that's good. Calf swivel, so right under the strap, you get the swivel of the calf. Foot hinges down. Little tiny bit of hinge up, ankle pivot, peg holes at the bottom of the feet. So pretty good articulation there, and it's nice to see a Morph figure. Okay, so just having some fun. If you have the Marvel Legends Retro 375 Sentinels, these were kind of an 8-inch figure. Not really scale with Marvel Legends, not articulated like real Marvel Legends. Not real Marvel Legends, but you know what I mean. The Marvel Legends Retro 375 are essentially like 5 to 7 POA, not a whole lot going on, but they have a very animated series look. So if you had a lot of these, if you do like forced perspective or something, you can make it look like, hey, it's a giant Sentinel, even though it's not really a giant Sentinel. But you could do something like that, and this is kind of fun. I always think about that very first episode of X-Men the animated series, and I swear I used to watch that episode all the time. I feel like it was on TV like every single day almost. So I always had to like relive through Morph dying like every single day. But it's definitely a fun one to kind of recreate some stuff like this. But enough of that. Let's check out the entire X-Men animated series Marvel Legends figures all together, lined up so you can see how they look. And I think they look great. Oops, as I knock ones down. Okay, so here are all the figures together, and you can see Morph does really tower over everyone else, and that's because the Vulcan body, again, is much larger. But then again, there were 4 female figures that they released. Like, Hasbro over the years hasn't released a lot of female figures. They've definitely improved and gotten better. So in the X-Men animated series VHS style packaging, we got 4 female figures compared to the 3 male figures. So that's actually a fairly good ratio, but hopefully we get to see more figures. Cyclops, Rogue, Gambit are probably the 3 that really stick out to me the most. If we get a Sabretooth, I worry, would it fit in the box? Everyone wants an Avalanche. Will Hasbro do that and release it in that line, or will they do it in a main line first? We'll have to kind of see. But I think all these figures look really great together. You guys let me know down in the comments below, what do you think of all these X-Men animated series figures? Do you collect them or do you pass on them? Honestly, they're very easy passes for a lot of folks because they already either have the other version of the figure that's been released, or they don't like cel shading and don't necessarily need it. Or if you missed out on the original release, this could be a good time to go back and get some of the other ones, like the Love Triangle Jean Grey. That was difficult, so this is an easy way for people to get one. A Tiger Stripe Wolverine, the Walgreens exclusive Mystique. Jubilee probably wasn't too hard. I don't know about how in demand she is now. Mr. Sinister, demand probably grew for him. Storm is really cool, but we had the 2 versions, the white suit and the black suit that had come out. Morph, I think, is going to be a big one. I could be wrong on that. I tend to be wrong on a lot of those speculation things. But I think he's a must pick up if you're collecting the line. I think Morph is one that you probably really wanted and definitely will be grabbing. There was always the issue before is, do they have the rights to do X-Men animated series? Because it's always come up like, would you do a Morph figure? And they're like, well, it's in the realm of possibility. It could happen. Wait and see. We'll see. And finally, we're here when we have officially released X-Men animated series figures, not just like inspired or could work with. These are truly based off of the animated series, hence the cel shading. I think they're great, but you guys let me know down in the comments below what you guys think of them. Which ones have you picked up? Which ones are you waiting on? Let me know what you think of that Sentinel, because yes, it's not super articulated, but for what it is, I think it's actually pretty cool. Somebody had commented, is like, dude, you just got a $25 shampoo bottle, and I couldn't help but laugh because like the plastic almost feels the same. It's a different material compared compared to regular 6-inch Marvel Legends, the Marvel Retro 375. But it's still a decent figure that, you know, I think could work really well if you have multiples and things like that. But there is the review. I'm happy with Morph. Shop Disney had them. I think Hasbro Pulse still has them listed as a pre-order. I'll have links in the video description below for all those figures. If you guys are interested in joining the MCU Collective, hit the join button to become a channel member. If you guys like this video, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. And as always, thank you for watching.